Someone who knows all about Indian spices is Asma Khan, award-winning chef, best-selling cookbook author, gender equality activist and star of the Emmy Award-nominated TV series Chef's Table. She joins me now after flying in from London for the Sydney Writers' Festival. Asma, welcome to India Now.
Thank you very much.
There's obviously lots of beautiful recipes in here, but there's also your life story as well. And I think some people might not realise this. You landed in the UK in 1991 as part of an arranged marriage, and you say that cooking was a way out of loneliness for you. What did you mean by that?
I think it's very hard for people who are younger, and anyone in their 50s will understand. We wrote letters home. There was no phone, and there was no easy access to family in India. And now when people say they miss home, you can Skype your dog in Delhi. Yeah. I mean, you can have a conversation with your dog. But at that time, this was just letters. It was airmail envelopes and people sending letters. It was very hard. It was expensive to call, expensive to fly, no mobile phones, internets, and the phone in Calcutta hardly worked at home. So it was really an uprooting, which is almost impossible for anyone to feel that unless you go off to a remote place. But you suddenly, everything that was familiar, everything that was for you normal and loving and exciting suddenly ended. And I ended up in this kind of ivory tower in an Oxbridge college, married to an academic who I was trying to make friends with.
And so where does food fall into that journey for you?
I cooked to go home. In the aroma of the spices, as I cooked, I felt the presence of Ammu. I call my mother Ammu there. And then when I managed to feed people, even those who were not South Asian, there was silence. They had gone home too. There's something about when you cook with patience and love, you taste it. And for many of the students who had also were going through similar experience as me, I then realized that this is what I really want to do in my life. But I didn't know how, because of course, at that time, you didn't see anyone accented, a Muslim immigrant, you know, setting up a restaurant. So it was like, that's obviously not for me, but I want to feed people. So I just continue to have loads of parties and feed lots of people.
And spoiler alert, it ends up with you running a really successful restaurant, the Darjeeling Express. But the thing I didn't realise is that growing up, you didn't do a lot of cooking growing up, did you?
No.
So how did you learn?
Well, and me not learning how to cook is quite normal. I mean, it's like you have mosquitoes, it's hot, you don't go into the kitchen, girl, you know, and most families, middle class and above, would have a cook who would cook for you. This is normal in India. So it wasn't that I was this kind of really spoiled kid. I was a really spoiled kid. But
again, not mutually exclusive. Both of these things can be true at the same time.
So I was a spoiled kid, but I just didn't know how to cook. And I didn't learn before I got married, because my husband's this really liberal, chilled out person who told me, oh, I don't believe in gender roles. I can cook. I'll cook for you. Didn't tell me he only knows how to make one thing. Makes really bad rice. And I was like, and then also that he was going to eat all his meals in college, because that was his job, because he was admissions tutor, graduate tutor that year. So he never ate. He cooked for me and left. And I was like, you know, what have I got into?
So when was it you discovered that there was other people that would eat your food, that you could build a community around it? Where does that start?
I'm still in awe when I see my restaurant full. I don't think I still can deal with the fact that people make journeys, come across to eat my food. It's very humbling. I'm always grateful, and I go to every table to say thank you. This is not a PR exercise. I'm genuinely grateful, because there's no... there are so many talented people. The fact that I am where I am, speaking to you, and people are listening to me and watching me, is humbling. And I realized when I was cooking from home, when I started doing supper clubs, I didn't have the confidence that anyone would pay to eat my food. So the initial supper clubs I did were all for hunger charities. We raised money for Yemen, we raised money for war zones, and I felt that even if they thought the food was not good, that they were donating the money to a charity, they won't come and tell me, oh, your pulao wasn't good. You know, I still feel nervous. I still feel nervous. And it's not because I just really want that experience that someone is eating my food to be beautiful. This is not arrogance. this is love. I want them to feel all the emotions that have gone into making that dish. That's the most expensive ingredient, is when you cook or anyone cooks, is their time. You can buy ingredients again and again, but that time that you spent cooking for someone you love is time you've invested in that dish. So I want them to feel that, experience that joy. Maybe I'm just, I'm a very emotional person, and for me, food is not something you do to impress people, or you're trying to show off, or you're trying to. It's really about trying to heal and nourish from deep in your soul. I know it probably doesn't make sense to most people.
No, I think
but
it makes sense.
it's just this interaction. It's that bridge between people. When I cook for you, it's my communication of who I am, what I do, what my heritage is. In a world full of hate, where people hate people, the color of my skin, my name, my accent, through my food, I can bring the bridges down.
Your restaurant, Darjeeling Express, hired only women.
Yes.
What was the best lesson you learnt from hiring only women?
That men don't know how to cook intuitively.
Intuitively? Okay, go on.
Because we are very patriarchal in India.
Yep.
Boys don't hang around the kitchen. Women eat last, girls eat least. Who's making the rotis when you're eating? We don't have this big fat loaf of bread we dump on the table. The women serve the men. This is true in many agrarian societies. You find this in Ireland, you find this in Mexico, where the women are serving the men. And so these women cook intuitively. They watch, they don't ask for instructions, because most of the men, if you look at the Michelin star chefs in England for one, almost everyone's CV is identical. They went to hospitality school, they trained in 5-star hotels. This doesn't mean that they're not good, but that means they didn't learn how to cook intuitively. They had instructions, they were cooking in stainless steel empires, they had freezers. The first time I saw a freezer was in Cambridge. I thought there was a dead body inside it. Because I was like, oh my God, what is this huge thing? I've never seen. Because for us, in the 80s in Calcutta, your freezer was this small thing where you put 2 ice, trays. And you got ice cubes if you were lucky. If there was electricity and some sibling hadn't emptied it all out in some milkshake. So I've never seen these big kind of things where you freeze food. It's different.
You set up a restaurant with women in northern Iraq, is that right?
Yes.
Why was that important for you to do?
Because it's just my lived experience that food can empower you. When you stand at the pass where the kitchen is and you send something and you watch someone eat the food that you've cooked, it makes you feel like you've played a role in helping them. I was at a dinner, I heard about the Iraq, what had happened in northern Iraq, and that these Yazidi girls were the last who came down the mountains. And that entire refugee camp is displaced women, but they are without their mothers. Their mothers never made it back. And I felt this whole ache that, why can't I do something? I found out that they were being supported by governments and they had a stipend. They had money. So I just suggested to these women who I'd met that let's open a cafe. And she said, we never have cafes in refugee camps. I said, let's try it. They're now very successful. I have stopped funding them. They're self-funded. They make cakes, they make bread. They're absolute entrepreneurs. But it gave them dignity. It gave them a role to play. It made them feel their bodies were their own. These were women who were enslaved. Some of them were repeatedly sold. When who had enslaved them died, they were sold in the bazaars in northern Iraq. This is not anything you can even imagine. But when they cooked, I saw the joy. They felt they were being useful, because there's something that strips away your entire dignity. And I wanted to do something for my 50th birthday. I had saved the money for a very shallow thing. I don't know how to ride a motorbike, but I'm an Indian, so you're not allowed to go anywhere on your own. The driver's always sitting with you. So I wanted to go on a motorbike. I wanted to buy a Harley Davidson, and I wanted to go to Europe and eat alone in restaurants, and eat alone and just be alone. And this for me was like the wildest thing I could do. So that money went into the camp. And I'm glad. I will never ride a bike. This will never happen. But I don't care because I think I did something far more useful with the money I saved. So that was supposed to be my 50th birthday gift to myself. That I was going to drive into this kind of sunset on a bike. And I visualized that I would be so good. I'd have a leather jacket. I know, all very shallow.
You've talked in the past about the disappointment your parents had at having a second daughter. After everything that's happened, this, this restaurant, the work that you've done around the world, this beautiful book that I'm, salivating over, after everything you've done, do you think they're still disappointed about having a second daughter?
I think the disappointment was very, very momentary for my mother. It was really that everyone around in the family made her feel she'd failed by delivering another girl. My grandmother had 5 daughters. I think she was one large part of this. It is so unfortunate that in India today, the matriarchs lament the birth of a girl, the mother-in-law, the grandmother. And it's still happening. It's more subtle, it's more hidden. It happens everywhere. It's happening now. And I think my mother just felt that pressure that, she had felt that she let everybody down. But she loved me so much. And she made my life. She taught me how to cook. I've dedicated a book to her. And she's my best friend. And she made me feel equal to my brother. She made me feel equal to my sister. And even though the extended family didn't make me feel equal, it was the extended family who made me feel inadequate. Because I was between a brother and a beautiful, slim, fair sister. When you're dark-skinned in our culture and you're fat and you play cricket the whole day, everybody's like, oh my God, no one's going to marry you. It's true, because in the beginning, no one wanted to marry me. Till I found an academic, poor thing, who decided to marry me. But it's a lot of pressure from society. My parents and my siblings, we're super close. But everybody else would, till my brother arrived, would tell my father, oh, that's it? You don't have, a son. So they make you feel inadequate. But the thing is that my mother loved me so much, my sister's a rock star. She made me feel I was a warrior princess. I felt like I could rule the world. So even at a very young age, I would tell everybody, I'm going to be so powerful. I'm going to be so famous. I'm going to be something. So they didn't destroy the spirit in me, but it doesn't mean that I'm not scarred. I'm scarred by other people. But I decided to use those scars to set fire to my soul, and I would do something great. And my aim was to try and heal people around me, because I know what it is to be defeated. And I know what it is to win. I wanted to take women on that journey from darkness to light.
Just lastly, before I leave you, when you eat a dish, anywhere in the world, how can you tell it's been made with love?
It doesn't look poncy. It doesn't have edible flour and foam and fizz and some kind of sauce reduced to some puff. So even before I taste it, I need to see how it arrives. If it looks like a 1-inch food on a 12-inch plate, you've lost me already. So this kind of fine dining, you try and think, what are they thinking? Where's the food? It's gone. They'll be 1-inch food. Yeah, but you can taste this. And yes, sometimes you can get it wrong, but when something has just made you happy, and it kind of opened up your palate and made you feel really content. Mm-hmm. That for me is food that's made with love.
Asma, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
And if you enjoyed that, you can see Asma Khan at the Sydney Writers' Festival.